Bombs aimed at the defenseless. Fanatics determined to take the lives of strangers. Defiance on the streets of the capital. The act of terror as a way of reviving the memory of terror. For Britain has been here before. In just 12 months in the mid-1970s, 40 terrorist attacks were launched on the capital by a single cell of the Provisional IRA. The aim was to make London life so unbearable that people would demand the withdrawal of British troops from Northern Ireland. For one terrifying year, they had it their way, until they were trapped in the siege of Balcombe Street. This is the story of the year London blew up. In the summer of 1974, a young Irishman from the small town of Ennis in County Clare arrived in London. His name was Joseph O'Connell. He was 23 years old, and it was his first visit to the city. O'Connell was met in London by another young Irishman from Cork called Brendan Dowd.
I just got here. I want to see a bit of London.
And what do you want to see exactly?
You know, Big Ben, Buckingham Palace, the changing of the guard.
You're shitting me. Jesus. They've sent me Christopher Robin.
O'Connell was no ordinary tourist in Trafalgar Square, but his aim was to blend in as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Dowd had rented a flat in a part of the city known for short-term lets. No one would notice them there, talk to them, or question them. And there they stayed, in total anonymity, waiting patiently for the moment to strike.
They were sleepers. They were already here, waiting for the instruction from their masters across the water to start operations.
A month later, these instructions arrived. It was then that O'Connell used the skills he'd acquired at Marconi Electronics in Cork, perfected at the finishing school of the Provisional IRA, to build 2 shrapnel-laden time bombs. With these, he would open a new chapter in IRA terrorism.
It was my 19th birthday, so I'd gone out to celebrate. My parents had come to pick me up about 7 o'clock. We went to the pub and stayed for most of the evening. We were going off to have a meal, but we didn't get there. I had a charm bracelet and my parents bought me some charms for the bracelet. And they'd given me money which I'd already spent on clothes and lots of cards. They were all wanting to buy me drinks and wish me a happy birthday, and yeah, it was nice. It was nice. It was nice for my parents as well to meet my friends from the army who I'd been living with and telling them about.
Hi, I'm John.
There was a birthday party going in a corner from a girl that I knew, so I went across and wished her a happy birthday. I spoke briefly to her father and a couple of other people that were around the table. The music I can actually remember quite well in the jukebox. Everybody was kung fu fighting. I don't know who sung it, but that's what was playing.
Yes, kung fu fighting was playing on the jukebox. That's an awful thing to remember.
It was around 7 in the evening when Brendan Dowd and a fellow volunteer arrived inside the Horse and Groom.
I didn't talk to them, just looked like a normal couple having a drink.
At around 8, Dowd and the girl left the pub, which was now packed with about 250 people. On the night of October the 5th, 2 pubs in Guildford, soldiers' pubs, had been destroyed by IRA time bombs. 5 people, all from the Horse and Groom, were dead. 50 others had been maimed by the shrapnel inside the bombs.
The explosion causes the nuts, bolts, ball bearings to spin and cause horrendous injuries. We're not talking about a scratch or a bruise or something. We're talking about people being maimed, disfigured, and disabled for life.
There was just one almighty flash when the bomb went off. It's as if a train had run right through the place, and then complete silence for I don't know how long.
What I do remember is coming round, I still had my eyes shut, and not being able to understand why everyone was screaming just because I'd fainted. I just thought I'd fainted. My mum and dad were still in the pub. I couldn't find them anywhere, so I wouldn't go to the hospital.
There was actual limbless bodies, people screaming, people with a virtual backside and the backs of their legs blown off, who were getting carried out face first that were still conscious.
When I saw the blood, it just about told me. When I saw 2 on the pane on the other side of the stretchers, they were dead with blankets over them, and the girls were just screaming and shaking.
I saw people being taken out and put into the ambulance. I thought too much.
So far, no one has claimed responsibility for the explosions. And if there is a claim, it may not come until whoever is responsible is clear of the country.
With one blow, O'Connell had put the Irish question back at the top of the British agenda. Like all IRA volunteers, he'd long believed the 50 bombs in Belfast could never have the impact of a single bomb in England. The public reaction to Guildford seemed to prove it.
It's their position. They want the bloodshed. Let them have the bloodshed. Get our boys out.
For Bill Hucklesby of the bomb squad, the aftermath of a terrorist act had to evoke a different response. For in the absence of any sightings of the bombers, it was the wreckage they'd caused which contained the only real clues for the police.
Sometimes the debris was 300 or 400 yards away, on top of roofs and that sort of thing. So the first step was to preserve the scene and then sweep it, literally with brushes, and collect all the debris.
They actually found my charms. They were very small. In all that rubble, it was just, I was amazed because it was just, the whole pub had gone and they found these little charms. Not just my charms. They came into the hospital ward one day and asked me if I recognised these things in a bag, and it was my dad's false teeth.
Alongside the huge forensic effort, Surrey police set themselves an epic task, tracking down the 380 people who'd been in the two Guildford pubs on the night of the explosions. In the Horse and Groom, everyone was accounted for except for one young couple.
It was a very well coordinated, very well managed, very focused investigation. And it produced a lot of information. In all, I think they took some 10,000 statements.
Every statement was cross-referenced. 20,000 hours of police overtime were claimed. As the police hunted for the Guildford bombers, the bombers decided to hunt the police. With breathtaking audacity, O'Connell and Dowd set out to kidnap the chief surveillance officer in the bomb squad, Andrew Gillam.
Doesn't he use Scotland Yard car park?
I think so, wouldn't you? No, he uses the multi-story at Semley Place.
According to the IRA's intelligence, the police officer parked his car next to Victoria Coach Station. But the intelligence was farcically wrong.
Well, it was just an ordinary morning, me turning up for work into my duty as a coach inspector. And I reversed my car in here, just going to get out the door, and three men appeared from that direction.
Keys. Open the door. Fucking hell.
They were Irish. The first thing that went through my head, the Guildford bombings were on, and all sorts of things. I was frightened. I was apprehensive of what was going to happen. The youngest one, he was so nervous with the gun, and I really was a bit worried then because his hands were shaking and he'd got a fairly large automatic. Couldn't hear what they were saying or where we were going. There's no point in being scared then, it's too late, isn't it? You never know what's going to happen, do you?
That's not him.
How do you know?
Well, unless he's just got a job working on the buses.
Obviously, I was the wrong one.
But I mean, why do you think they kept you so long? I haven't a clue. I wouldn't know.
It wasn't till later when we got the full story of how they missed the bus and they'd mistaken a bus inspector for a man head of the bomb squad. Well, he wouldn't be in uniform with raid bandages and a funny hat on, would he?
Basil Dalton, who'd spent 4 hours in the boot of his car before being rescued, was now the only person to have seen the IRA team. But the team was about to change. 4 days after the bungled kidnapping, O'Connell and Dowd received reinforcements from Ireland. The first man was 24-year-old Eddie Butler from County Limerick.
Eddie Butler?
Butler had already been vetted by the Republican Army Council, but O'Connell and Dowd were given the final say.
You've been active on the border.
West Fermanagh, nearly 12 months.
Well, this will be a lot different, you know.
I do. But I was told a Sten gun still works over here.
You have a conviction?
Daubing slogans.
Well, I suppose it's all part of the struggle. And you're afraid of flying?
Aye. Petrified.
Anything else? Are you afraid of anything else?
Nothing else.
Well, I don't think we'll be doing much flying.
Harry Duggan, the second recruit, was one name that was known to the Irish Special Branch.
Harry?
Joe?
But they thought he was a dead man.
Sunday is traditionally a day for talk, and in Fecal, County Clare today, all the talk was about Harry Duggan.
Reports of Duggan's death on an IRA training exercise, reports strong enough to draw even his own father to an unmarked grave in County Clare, had led the Irish authorities to decommission his file.
I'm Michael Wilson now. I'm giving you the name of the Prime Minister's son. That's a good one, huh? I suppose you'll be taking up the pipe like your father, then.
Well, Mr. Wilson, let's show you to your new residence.
The first operation O'Connell chose for the newly assembled team was to target the Royal Artillery, several of whose regiments were serving in Northern Ireland.
King's Arms, Francis Street, Woolwich. A military target. The watering hole of the Royal Artillery. So close, it practically is the barracks. It'll be a lifted car this time, Bren. One of Bren's Cortinas. He knows most of them in London by now. He'll pick us up at Sloane Square at 9, no later. 12 sticks of jelly, a box of coach bolts, which you will get, Eddie.
No nails. They melt.
It was a fairly ordinary night. As I did on most nights, I went over to the King's for a pint and a game of darts. As I remember, we were looking out for parcels and things like that, and watching out for strangers. But it was one of the advantages of it being the regular and the place that we all used. We knew everyone who was there.
Aye, there's a few in.
A few?
Well, it's not heathen.
The soldiers?
Aye.
You certain?
Not battle dress like, but you know, haircuts.
Let's do it. We go. There's some workmen around the corner. Any trouble, shoot them. Harry, you come with me.
About 10 o'clock in the evening, there was a noise of breaking glass and a tinkle. And I looked across to see what had caused it. And in the middle of the floor was an object smoking. My immediate reaction was to get out. So I ran for the door as fast as I could, and I didn't make it. Next thing I knew, I was on my knees in front of the door and all of the lights are out and there was a smell of explosive, burnt explosive, and there was a fair bit of moaning going on and a bit of screaming, although I couldn't hear a lot because my ears were ringing from the explosion. I tried to stand and I thought that the floor had gone through into the cellar. And when I then looked to see where the hole was, I found it wasn't a hole, it was the end of my leg which had been quite badly damaged. And what I'd been trying to do was to stand up on a foot that was no longer there.
The publicans and the brewers consider that there's no real defence against the terrorist whose target is a bar room full of people enjoying a drink and each other's company.
I think the surgeon thought I was slightly hysterical because before I went down to theatre, he told me he'd try and do what he could to save the foot, but I understand I laughed. Basically, the foot and the base of the leg were damaged so badly that they had to amputate mid-shin.
It was an injury from a bomb, which amounts to a missile injury, with far more damage to the tissues of the body, and therefore far more bleeding, and the possibility of far more disability in later life.
If the truth were told, my one real regret is that my hearing was damaged. I lost the hearing in my left ear, and I can no longer hear stereophonic sound. And one of my favourite pieces of music was the Vivaldi Concerto for Two Trumpets, where you have one essentially in either corner of the room talking to each other. I can't hear them. I can't hear the two voices. So some things like that are closed to me.
The Woolwich bomb came hard on a series of other attacks in London that included military clubs in Piccadilly and Harrow Public School. All had been the work of O'Connell's active service unit. Together they showed that this was no hit-and-run campaign and that the IRA had come to London to stay.
We had at the yard an operations room and everything was plotted, and what we were trying to do there was to identify a pattern to give us an indication of where they were going to hit next. And gradually, through the scientific links and the fingerprint links, we were able to see that it was the work of probably one group, particularly the fingerprint evidence, which did show it being a team of 4 men.
But all their prints meant little to the police if they belonged to people without criminal records.
Nothing on our data bank. Nothing from Ireland either, from either the RUC or the Garda. They might have been born yesterday for all the information we got on them.
To help find the terrorists, the bomb squad recruited a rising officer from the special branch called Peter Imbert. His contribution would become the most significant of all in the months to come.
We were trying to gain information about the IRA from every possible source. Not only from our colleagues, particularly in the Royal Ulster Constabulary, but others who had had dealings with Irish extremists. And of course we were trying to cultivate informants as well.
O'Connell's cell, however, remained undisturbed, with its leader determined to widen the campaign and to choose targets right at the heart of London. Ten days after the Woolwich bomb, in which 2 people lost their lives, an English TV audience was able to hear a justification for it from the IRA's Chief of Staff himself, Daithí O'Connell, a man who was on the run in his own country.
Furthermore, over 12 months ago, the IRA stated that they would strike at British military personnel when and wherever they deemed necessary.
Even if it means killing children, even if it means killing civilians.
We strike at economic, military, political and judicial targets. And
So you're saying that the only things you've done have been those targets?
Those in that classification, those are the targets.
The targets were, in fact, broadcast by the Provisional IRA. I don't think any target would have come outside in some way any of those four categories. So, in other words, they had carte blanche.
Stop, whoa, yes, wait a minute, Mr. Postman. Wait, Mr. Postman.
They used to put these high explosive devices into the pillar box, and the bomb would shatter the pillar box.
It went off like a sort of an hand grenade, you know, because it's cast iron, it just splintered to pieces. This is what the people got hit with. Lower down. Waste height.
Another factor in pillar box bombs was secondary devices to knock out the services responding to the first. Where pillar boxes fitted into the categories of legitimate target, just defeats me. But that's what they did.
The postal bombs had been planted during a frantic 48-hour period that also saw both Houses of Parliament pass, in record time, Britain's first Prevention of Terrorism Act.
The IRA will become an illegal organization in this country. It will become an offence to belong to it or to support it financially.
The bill allowed the police to detain those they suspected of terrorist acts for 8 days without being charged. And a day after this became possible, the Surrey police made their first arrests for the Guildford bombs.
13 people charged as a result of Surrey police investigations following the pub bombs came together under the same roof for the first time since the arrests were made. 8 of them have been charged with the murder of Miss Caroline Slater at the Horse and Groom Public House in Guildford in October.
If you look at the matchwood that was the Guildford pub, or the Woolwich, I mean, utter devastation and harmless drinkers blown to pieces. Every adult in the country knew what it was like to drink in a public bar. People felt very hysterical about it and felt glad that these bastards had been nailed. They had no sense that the wrong people had been nailed.
The 4 people, who would become known as the Guildford Four, were firmly in police custody when O'Connell's team struck again. And continued to strike.
They wanted to give the British public, and in particular the anti-terrorist squad, a hammering. The anti-terrorist squad was quite a small squad at the beginning of this, but it was realised that it had got to be expanded.
As more bombs exploded, one thing became clear from the scientific evidence.
It's a pattern, a series of throw bombs all linked.
The composition of the bombs thrown before the arrests in Guildford was the same as the ones thrown after.
A similar weight, around 5 pounds, shrapnel consisting of coach and engineering, bolts, nuts, washers, all intended to inflict maximum damage with minimum charge weight. Going back to Brooks Club in October and also to Woolwich in November.
But the trademark signatures of O'Connell's cell were all the bomb squad had. The best the police could do was encourage Londoners to be more vigilant.
I don't have to spell out the dangers from bombs. Here's how the public can help us and themselves. If you find an unattended package or bag, whatever you do, don't touch it.
London absolutely adapted to it. It almost became part of daily life in London. And it's hard to imagine, but people kind of took it in their stride, and there was a kind of wartime mentality. I don't think people boycotted the tube or didn't go to work. It was a kind of wartime, well, we'll carry on.
This kind of spirit, the Blitz spirit, was not what the IRA... With Christmas approaching, O'Connell's team decided to raise the temperature. They would target shoppers in Oxford Street.
They were putting fire bombs into suits, and down in the China department there was an explosion. We had the police coming in to explain to us. We had classes to tell us how these bombs were made, to show us how they were made, and how to well, you didn't want to touch them actually, but I mean how they could be diffused.
Diffusing incendiary bombs was one thing. Coping with 100 pounds of high explosives was quite another. In the run-up to Christmas 1974, Harry Duggan parked a stolen Cortina outside Selfridges, which contained the biggest bomb London had seen since 1944.
The call would be made to places like Reuters or Samaritans, somebody with a 24-hour reception facility.
Are you the Samaritans?
Sometimes the warnings would be hoaxes. You didn't know whether to treat it seriously or not, so you had to treat it seriously.
There's a bomb in a car parked outside Selfridges, Oxford Street, London.
It's difficult to determine why they gave warnings, because it was totally confusing.
30 minutes. Probably less now. Yes. Tell them it's a car. I'm sorry. I've forgotten the make.
Well, it blew the whole of this lot, all the glass, all the windows, all went out. And the blast went straight through open the doors in the restaurant, and went straight across the room to us. This was just massive glass everywhere. The blast had gone across the buildings, beyond those buildings and over the top. And we're shattering glass in the streets beyond. There was £1 million worth of glass shattered that night.
Oxford Street is now closed. Keep moving and keep the footways and the roadways clear.
Oh, no. The store was open and carried on business in just the same way. Exactly the same way. Yes. Oh, no, nothing stopped business. That went on as usual.
Having stopped Oxford Street, if only for a day, O'Connell moved next to Knightsbridge.
How does it feel?
How does it look?
Looks fine.
Feels fine.
The manager of Harrods had boasted that his store was bomb-proof.
We'll fix it up in the toilets, yeah? Then take the whole thing through to the pen shop where I showed you.
It was Eddie Butler who smuggled the bomb parts into Harrods, and then assembled the grenade inside the store. "10,000 people were inside the building that day.
Did you get that? This is the Provo IRA. The code word is Cry Wolf with an E.
All of a sudden, these men appeared, and I don't know, they appeared to be wearing like riot-type gear or something. I'd never seen men like that in real life, dressed like that. And they literally just picked us up around the waist and ran.
As quickly as possible.
It wasn't until we got to the escalators and you saw Mr. Midgley, who was the managing director at the time, and he's going, everybody come on, move quickly, move, there could be another bomb, there could be another bomb. And so we just ran like hell.
We didn't know what we were looking for. We didn't have a suspect. We knew the sort of group that we were dealing with. We knew their methods of attack, and we knew what we needed to do in response, but we didn't know who.
But then, at the end of December, With the capital braced for an onslaught, the IRA leadership announced that it was prepared to discuss a ceasefire. In Westminster, the government seized the chance.
What had changed in the pressures on the British government was that the war in Northern Ireland had spread to the streets of English cities. The bombing campaign on the mainland was bringing home to British people the horror that had previously been felt only in Northern Ireland.
A sustained cessation of violence over a period must be genuine, and it must be sustained, because nobody can be political for a short space of time and then return to killing and bombing. It has got to be genuine.
I think you should know that I've been talking to Dublin with Brandon, and there's to be a Christmas truce.
The ceasefire talks had come 3 months after O'Connell had opened the London campaign.
What the hell for?
I don't know. The details I don't know, but they're just talking at the moment, sounding things out like. What it does mean is we've been told not to go ahead with the underground.
So that's it then? For this year, I mean.
What do you think? Our generals want to sit down and negotiate. Well, let's fill their fucking pens.
Edward Heath, leader of Her Majesty's opposition, Mr. Internment. We have his address, we have the layout of his house, we have the time he's at his bloody desk.
Good, well that's fine. Now the only other change...
It was 3 days before Christmas when Edward Heath was targeted. But on that night, he was in Broadstairs conducting a carol service.
I was up in the drawing room just laying out his drinks and drinks cabinet, which is near the window where he sat, always just near the window. I don't know if they knew that he sat there. I don't know. They have their information, don't they? They know more than we think they do.
He's in.
Here was meant to be the last casualty before the ceasefire. O'Connell and Butler made their traditional getaway in a stolen Cortina. But within 30 seconds, the police were on their tail.
There was a traffic car with officers in it who saw a car jump some traffic lights, and they followed it. They were going to pull this car to see who was in it. But they got a call over the air that said there had been a bomb in Ebury Street, and they wanted a unit there as quickly as possible. It was like a bad dream. You know, you'd reach out to get them, and they'd be gone.
The ceasefire began 2 hours later. In the morning, normality was restored to London. The truce was observed by O'Connell's cell, and yet, having put down their guns, they were to suffer their biggest blow to date. It came by complete accident. A police officer was on a burglary patrol near the IRA's safe house in Fairholme Road.
I was standing on a static observation at that window up there, just observing Fairholme Road here, when I spotted a guy who, round the corner of my eye, was walking along the street. He was dressed slightly differently for the area. You know, it wasn't your average student or anything like that. He turned into this street, Fairholme Road, and walked a few paces down and then completely stopped. I thought, well, that was very odd. So I came out from my vantage point. When I got to the street, just caught him disappearing round the corner to the right. And so I decided just to follow him and see where he went.
PC Blackledge followed the suspected burglar to a bus stop.
I finally say, look, I want to know what you've got in your pockets. When I got hold of him, at that point, he broke free, ran across the traffic, across North End Road. This guy was faster than me. I suppose he had more incentive to run. I become aware of this motorcyclist. As I'm running down here, the motorcyclist by now has overtaken both of us who are running. And he gets to the end of the street, gets off his motorcycle, steps onto the pavement and stands with his arms and legs sort of spread eagled. The last thing to enter my head was this guy would have a gun in his pocket. He was rolling around, obviously in some pain. I looked down at him and he looked up at me and said, "God help me, I'm a police officer." And then his eyes rolled back and he fell into unconsciousness. I didn't know Stephen Tibble as he turned out to be. The only time I knew he was a police officer was when he told me with what turned out to be his dying words.
P.C. Tibble was murdered by William Quinn, an American volunteer who had only just joined O'Connell's active service unit. Quinn now escaped into the tube system and eventually back to Ireland. But within an hour, the police had found the IRA safe house.
I knew that where this individual had been in the Fairholme Road, so I decided that's where we ought to start looking.
The police found in the basement flat enough IRA bomb-making equipment to put together half a dozen high-explosive bombs.
Oh, this is a very important find. It's the first bomb factory we found in London, and I'm satisfied that what we've found in this bomb factory is going to link us with bombings and shootings that have happened in London in recent weeks.
By the time the police broke into the flat, O'Connell and the rest of the team had flown, leaving behind their impressive arsenal. What the police also found at Fairholme Road were 18 sets of fingerprints. 14 sets could be identified because they belonged to known IRA terrorists and gun runners. But 4 prints remain to puzzle the police. And then, with the ceasefire entering its 200th day, O'Connell's men were about to open a second, more murderous campaign. The bomb at the Caterham Arms had been an astonishing breach of the IRA ceasefire. O'Connell had chosen to reopen the English bombing campaign less than 20 miles away from his first bomb in Guildford.
The Caterham bomb frankly came out of the blue. We thought that was a period of time when we wouldn't get any IRA atrocity.
The bomb went off in a bar crowded with young people enjoying themselves at a discotheque. Police think the device was a...
The attitude of the people outside towards the Irish was frightening. Oh, effing this and effing that, really anti-Irish. And I thought, fine, all right, the IRA, the people that do it, there's an awful lot of Irish people that are perfectly lovely and don't even agree with this. And it was horrible because I thought, God, if anybody opens their mouth that's Irish, that's nice, they'll probably get beaten up or something. It was terrible. I think the worst thing of that night was the thought that you're out for a good time and someone had got the bare face to come in, sit down, plant a bomb, and then go and know that there's so many people there.
How did it go?
I don't know. Haven't seen the news.
Yeah, but you had no difficulties, like?
I don't think so.
But how can they just do that, walk in and see everybody and know that they're going to kill and devastate people's... Oh. I just couldn't get to grips with that.
And there was a few there, was there?
There was a few. More than a few.
But don't get too relaxed. I want us to push on. I want them to know for sure this thing's begun again.
The Caterham bomb, one senior policeman admitted, had been a carbon copy of the Guildford bombs. But the Surrey police had already extracted 4 confessions for the earlier atrocity, and these people, to the delight of the general public, were now convicted and given life several times over.
They knew perfectly well that these people weren't of the right caliber, but they had confessions, and what they got were confessions from those who were least able to withstand it.
Living in derelict squatting houses in Kilburn, the IRA gang planned their bomb attacks. Amid the squalor, they took hard and soft drugs and kept explosives and guns. Here, bombs were made.
The likelihood of them being employed by the IRA was negligible. They may have been Irish, but they had none of the qualities that would have been looked for by somebody having to operate in secret in the land of the enemy.
Do you hear this one? Carol Richardson, age 17, was squatting at the time in North London. It was while she was living the life of a dropout that she met many IRA men, mostly at parties where rebel songs were sung through the haze of cannabis smoke.
You never take us to those parties, Joe.
No, but I take you to other parties, don't I?
20 minutes before the explosion, a man with a soft Irish accent had telephoned a warning to the Daily Mail. Police were searching the hotel when it went off.
Once O'Connell's group had broken the ceasefire and someone else had taken the blame for Guildford, it seemed they were suddenly making up for lost time.
London looked as if it was back to the Blitz. The restaurants, clubs and other places which had been hit were sandbagging their premises, and people were putting tape crisscrossed across windows so that the glass wouldn't shatter.
Despite the defences, the bombs kept getting through. 2 people were killed at the Hilton, 2 more in a Chelsea restaurant, a bomb disposal officer in Notting Hill, a man outside the Ritz. In a new twist to the savagery, the IRA had taken machine guns into the West End. These were random killings. Unlucky people in the wrong place at the wrong time. But now O'Connell's men decided to target specific individuals. As they turned to assassination, Brendan Dowd was replaced by a Scots-born volunteer, Hugh Doherty.
Hugh Fraser lives on Camden Hill Square. WA?
That's Kensington again.
As good as this who's who.
Anyway, I saw a picture of Hugh Fraser on one of these clippings. Him and his Jag. There he is. Oh, he's legit. The terrorists are the tyrants. They have placed themselves outside of society in a state of war. Their only deserts can be the firing squad.
My first experience dealing with a bomb occurred in the September when a bomb was placed under the car of Sir Hugh Fraser, who was a Conservative MP.
Dr. Hamilton Fairley was out for a walk with his 2 little dogs that morning, saw something under this car wheel, and we believe he must have just leant upon the car to see what it was, and that's when it disturbed the anti-personnel device, and the car was blown to pieces and he was killed immediately.
The car was on its roof in the road. There was still smoke coming from it, and parts of it were found in adjacent side roads. You know, I can remember somebody coming up and handing me a coil or a carburettor or some small component, and that had been found. It'd gone over 2 streets.
And now you can just see that actually there is a heart in the middle here.
The death of Dr. Hamilton Fairley touched the British public deeply. He had been the foremost cancer specialist in the country.
They didn't intend to kill him, but the bomb is the most indiscriminate of weapons. You may select a target, but if you put a bomb down to take it out, collateral damage, both human and premises-wise, is huge. It doesn't care, and they didn't care, who was involved in their bombs. It is indiscriminate.
The Frasers' nanny was just arriving for work. Her car was hurled against a tree, but she and 6 other people escaped with shock and minor cuts.
It's obviously a most monstrous thing to have done, to try and injure perfectly innocent people, kill innocent people. And I'm more than ever personally resolved to see that terrorism is stamped out.
The one thing that stuck in my mind was all the leaves had been blown off the trees. It was that time of the year when the leaves were just turning brown, and the whole of them seemed to have shed their leaves, and so a lot of the evidence was covered by leaves.
I distinctly remember coming home from school one weekend and hearing the terrible news that Professor Gordon Hamilton Fairley, the eminent cancer specialist who was the father of one of my friends from school, had been killed in a bomb incident in Camden Hill Square in London. I think it was that incident that was a final straw for my father, who obviously been watching the mounting terror campaign on the mainland with increased concern.
It is a record breaker!
Ross McWhirter, along with his identical twin brother Norris, was editor of the Guinness Book of Records and a children's TV personality.
And that is spoken by about 620 million people.
On November the 4th, believing private citizens should take responsibility for maintaining law and order, he put a £50,000 bounty on the heads of the bombers.
I think it sort of fits into his always being a courageous citizen who was never worried about putting his head above the parapet.
I think that history shows that when somebody has a price on their head, that they're more likely to be turned into the authorities. It's not a particularly pleasant thought, but that is the lesson of history.
I don't think I actually knew that he was going on television that particular day to say what he did. I mean, I didn't think, oh gosh, I wish you hadn't done that. You know, what are the consequences going to be? It never occurred to me. Ross had actually been to the dentist and come back, and we were going to the theatre that evening with some friends, and I'd been to put petrol in the car and came back, and it was darkish. As I got out of the car, somebody came from the other side of the car, and the other one said to me, hand over the keys. And I sort of thought, strange thing, you know, I nearly chucked them in the garden. And then, as he was pointing a gun at me, I thought, well, perhaps I better hand the keys to him. And that left me without keys to get into the house, so I rang the front doorbell and thinking, oh, Ross must come and deal with these people. Not thinking who they were. He came to the door, and I sort of said, oh, do something about this, and I sort of rushed past him, and at that moment they shot him. The first shot actually went into his side, I think, and I'd been told that if it had only been that one, it would have been, you know, it wouldn't have killed him, but they then shot him in the head as well. And I came and saw him sort of slumped inside the front door, and I rushed out of the front door down the path and to neighbours to try and get help.
Police are looking for 2 men who were seen driving off in a blue Ford Escort. The obvious inference at this point is that it may have been the work of the IRA.
I remember being summoned to the housemaster's office during prep in the evening. And then I saw James also having been summoned, and we met outside. And I think at that moment I probably had a feeling that something wasn't quite right. It's a terrible job for a chap to have to do, but he told us that our father had been shot. He didn't mention that he'd been killed.
It was the bounty on their heads that O'Connell's men could not forgive. That man, said one of them, must have thought he was in Texas. But in the wake of Ross McWhirter's murder, It was central London that came to resemble a lawless frontier town. Believing they were invincible, the gunmen became more fanatical. The pressure on officers like Peter Imbert was now even greater.
I think it's had impact today. I hope that we're not going to forget it tomorrow. If we do forget it tomorrow, we will have another horrifying incident next week. I think none of us must be complacent.
Mr. Imbert warned that the entire population was now in the front line of the bombings. He wants people to help by reporting suspicious cars and parcels, to tell police about unusual visits to neighbours, even to listen in to conversations in pubs and cafes.
I was standing in there myself on the evening, chatting to customers, and a guy came along and asked me to book him a table. There was no curtains in those days. So I said, okay. So I walked up there. He walked up there with his wife. We met on the door. I brought him in.
At mid-morning, passers-by in the street outside saw only the sanitized aftermath of the night's horror.
I was advised to close it because financially it was a wiser decision to close it. But emotionally, I wasn't going to close. I wasn't going to let them get the better of us. Why should we? I mean, you know, we fought to make the West End what the West End is. We fought to make that restaurant strong and popular. And I couldn't allow that to happen.
Already these bomb attacks are becoming so familiar as to seem almost commonplace. Police believe the public are going to have to be more vigilant than ever.
But vigilance was not enough, and Scotland Yard knew it. Towards the end of November, the bomb squad decided they had to take the initiative.
They do like returning to the scene of the crime. Tussauds hit 3 times, Baker Street Tube twice, now this little lot. Most of their hits between 1800 and 2300, and they never come out on a wet day.
A report landed on my desk from an officer on one of the anti-terrorist teams. It was a fairly naive report, but it really sparked some lateral thinking amongst me and the other senior officers there.
He pointed out the number of times when bombs had been placed a second time at a place. And he said, look, they hardly do it at the weekend. He said, but most of the bombs and the shootings take place between 6:30 in the evening and 10:30 at night. And it never happens on a wet night.
Probably because they think the moisture might short the electrics in whatever bag of tricks they're carrying at the time. So, this is what we propose. Complete saturation of the West End between those hours. Every officer in plain clothes, working in pairs, at every major intersection in Westminster and Kensington.
I remember minuting it and it going up to the powers that be, because this was an operation which was going to be performed by specialist groups of uniform officers, special patrol group, etc.
On the outskirts at these points, a ring of special patrol group units.
We thought, or at least I felt certain that Scots would be a target because they had thrown a bomb through the window, and that evening there was an Englishman who was interviewed on television. He got a crystal clear Oxford accent, and he said, they're not going to drive us out of our favourite eating places.
The reason we came here today was simply because this place had been blown up last night, and I thought the boys would enjoy being in a place which had been blown up, and they'd find it an adventure.
And we thought that if the IRA had seen that, that was a challenge to them, and they would come back to Scott's Restaurant.
In hope this would happen, over 1,000 policemen in plain clothes were needed.
They were put on observation near likely targets, not just those that the IRA had attempted to blow up or shoot before, but places like Downing Street, Houses of Parliament, other places in Whitehall, various clubs and theatres and hotels in London.
Combo was the name given by the Met to their new strategy. For 8 days it ran, with no success and near ruinous costs.
It was one of those periods where there were probably more policemen on the streets of London than there were members of the public.
A huge number of police officers involved in that operation. It was a cold night, it was about 9 o'clock, 6th of December, and I was with a colleague, Phil McVeigh, and we were really walking around these streets, not really knowing what to do other than just to stay alert, I guess.
As the winter evening fell, O'Connell's team gathered for what now was becoming a familiar routine.
Jesus, Eddie. I've been looking for you for bloody hours. I went to the Arsenal. What the sure hell for? The soccer. You know, Highbury. I wanted to see this kid Brady, a Dubliner. Get a fucking grip. Joe will be here any minute.
Okay, boys. Only guns tonight, no bombs.
That suits me.
I thought we'd head up west again.
You take this.
At around 8:30 on December the 6th, all four of O'Connell's team drove into London's West End in a stolen Cortina. They were fully armed, with 2 machine guns and 5 pistols.
The officers at Scott's restaurant saw this Ford Cortina vehicle come round the corner. The windows went down and the IRA chaps opened fire on Scott's restaurant.
They were actually seen in the Cortina they used, driving past, and almost immediately they shot with the M1 carbine. One of the officers had phoned through, in fact a few of them phoned through with a number, alerting all the other units as part of the containment.
So our officers on observation were able to transmit this to New Scotland Yard with the index number of the vehicle they were using.
And as the call came up, we were on the corner looking down towards Oxford Street. And at that point in time, the Cortina was coming over Oxford Street towards us. And it actually passed us. So we stood there looking at the Cortina and looking at the 4 guys in the car. You know, there was no police transport around. We didn't have a car, so it was a cab and follow that car. And he was excellent. He was really cool, calm, collected. He didn't panic. We said to him, you know, stay a healthy distance behind. And he followed our instructions to the T. The 4 guys in the Cortina got out and started to walk back towards Baker Street. We got out of the cab and started to follow them. We weren't armed. In fact, we didn't even have a truncheon between the 2 of us. Why they stayed together as a foursome, God only knows, but they did. And then they started running west up here, going towards Paddington. And we followed them. We were a little way back, and they turned around and started to fire shots at us. They dropped a bag that they were carrying. This bag had firearms in it. And I think one of the reasons why they did was because at that time there was a lot of police sirens going off. An SPG carrier carried on up the road and they cut in front of the 4 guys. The four terrorists had started to make their way down the steps, and one of them split off from the group and was starting to make his way down Boston Place towards Marylebone Station. He was on this side of the road, and I lost him from my vision. And I was really worried that he was in a doorway waiting to come out as I passed. And I moved into the middle of the road and was running down the middle of the road rather than close to the wall, because I was just very conscious of the fact that he could have been waiting to ambush me. And it was going through my mind at the time. I remember it very well, thinking I'm not going to see Margaret, my wife, and my two daughters again.
The four gunmen linked up again outside a block of council flats in Balcombe Street. By now they could hear the police sirens in all directions.
Up the stairs! Up the stairs! Up! Up!
When I got down here, I was still very much on my own at that stage. There was a lady hanging out of the balcony up there, and she was indicating that the men had gone into the basement area, into the block of flats there.
Just not inside of here, did he?
Just the line to Downtown Idiot. Long before they were really
The flat belonged to a middle-aged couple, John and Sheila Matthews. They were to become the centre of national attention at the siege of Balcombe Street.
This was the scene minutes after four gunmen burst into the council flat of John and Sheila Matthews and took them hostage. The area was sealed off, neighbours were evacuated, and police marksmen took up positions.
I was with my husband. We were watching the television. The 10 o'clock news came on, and it just said there's been an incident in Dorset Square. Well, Dorset Square is just adjacent to Balcombe Street. And I said to my husband, I said, gosh, phone up Sheila and see what's going on.
What do you want? You can't.
And he came back and said, I think I've got the wrong number. And I said, why? He said, well, it wasn't Sheila or John. I said, oh, well, let me do it. This man answered, and I said, can I speak to Sheila? And he said, no, and put the phone down. So I immediately phoned again. And he said, if you don't want anything to happen to them, don't ring again. So I put the phone down and immediately did a 999 call. I said, they're in 22B Balcombe Street. That's where they are. And, oh gosh, I was trembling. It was such a shock.
Open up, it's the police.
On your feet. Up! Open the door.
Fuck off, you bastards! Leave us alone! He's got the gun on my head! You touch that door again and we'll shoot them!
On the floor. On the floor!
Come on!
Over it. Over it.
This reign of terror had been going on for a long time in London. I've only got to hear a shooting incident and Irish accents, and you know very well what it is.
Put your hands, put your hands! Just don't... Shut up!
Keep an eye on the window.
Put the fucking thing! The cops are just outside, lads. Keep it down.
Scotland Yard. This is the provisional IRA. We're in the flat in Marylebone and I've got 2 hostages. Tell them your name. Up it!
John and Sheila Matthews.
Did you hear that? The Matthews.
They said they were provisional IRA and they wanted a plane to Ireland.
Was anybody hurt?
Not so far as we know.
Do you know what the condition of the hostages are at the moment?
Well, again, as far as we know, we haven't been in communication with the flat, but as far as we know, they're fit and well.
I phoned Scotland Yard and they wouldn't tell me anything. They said, well, who are you? I said, I'm Mrs. Matthews' sister. How do you know it's Mrs. Matthews? I said, I just know. I said, believe me, I know. And I was getting, well, raised my voice somewhat. So he said, yes, he said, they're a middle-aged couple living in the 2nd floor flat in Balcombe Street. I said, that's right. I said, 22.
I was at my brother's house in North Oxfordshire. A call came through from Detective Chief Superintendent Jim Neville to say they were holed up in a flat. They'd taken people hostages and that they were well armed. You know, the IRA people were. And he suggested that I came back to London.
They're not going anywhere, and they're not getting any plane to Ireland.
Are you going to make any deals at all with them?
No, we're not going to make any deals at all.
So I said to Jim Neville, well, congratulations on cornering them. I said, why don't you get them out? I'll see you tomorrow morning at Paddington Green Police Station, and we'll start the questioning then.
About midnight, there was a knock on the door, and it was my parents, and apparently there had been a news flash, which my parents had heard because they were out, and they said that a young couple were being held hostage in Dorset Square. Well, we were the only young couple in Dorset Square, so my mother rushed round here, sweet-talked her way through the police and said, it's my daughter, it's my daughter. And they let her come up, the police came up with her, and also the BBC followed her up, and the BBC never left. They just took up residence for the week.
Softly, softly. This was the strategy the Met had decided on during the first hours of the siege. The gunmen could see reinforcements being drafted in, but they also believed that police marksmen were now in the hallway outside their barricaded room.
Armed police officers went in and out at the double. They were covered by police snipers hidden on nearby rooftops and by a team of marksmen who, using the two-fisted technique, trained their .38 pistols on the balcony and windows of the siege flat.
I arrived on the Sunday morning, only to find, to my surprise, that we hadn't kicked the door down and gone in and arrested them, and they were still in the flat. And I was met with the welcome from the Assistant Commissioner, the Commissioner, Jim Neville, my Detective Chief Superintendent, and they said to me, right, you're going to be the negotiator, you're going to negotiate with this team. You've got to get these people out alive.
At midday today, police began laying a cable from their nearby control room to the siege building. The gunmen had said they wouldn't negotiate on the Matthews phone. The police explained what was going on.
We have established contact with the people in the flat, and they have agreed to accept a direct landline from us so that we can conduct negotiations with them more or less person to person.
Our technical people cut off the phone because they were phoning all sorts of people themselves and lowered a field telephone down, and I called out to them with a microphone saying, there is a telephone outside the window, open the window and bring it in.
It's clean.
My first reaction was, now how do I start? And how do I talk them out? How do I find out how many are in there? How do I find out exactly what they are? How do I find out how they're armed? You know, there were a lot of things that concerned me. But I thought, well, once we get going, we'll be all right.
The problem for Peter Imbert, however, was that the top man at Scotland Yard had left him very little room for manoeuvre.
Anybody else. They are not going anywhere. When they emerge from that room, they will come out under arrest and they will stand their trial like any other criminal.
I had never been faced with a situation like that before. I realised they hadn't. And so there was no telling what they were going to do. There was no book about it. There was no instructions. I spoke to them and I said my colleagues and I had been chasing them for a little while and we were bound to meet up at some time, and this was the time. It had come to that now. I said, you can call me Peter. I said, what's your name?
I'm Tom. Dick and Paddy.
Of course, it didn't occur to me what he was saying with Tom, Dick and Harry. So I took that and accepted it. And from then on I called him Tom, and he called me Peter. He allowed me to talk to Mrs. Matthews.
Yeah, okay.
And I told her that she was going to be all right and to keep her pecker up.
Yes. Yes, we're fine. Yeah, I will.
Okay, you heard her. She's fine.
And then Tom said to me, very carelessly, he said,
all she wants is a glass of water.
And I said, well, you can get her one. He said, no, I'm not falling for that.
Your fellas are all over the place, aren't they?
Which indicated they hadn't got access to the kitchen and that they were in the front room.
The 4 gunmen and their 2 hostages are now confined to the 13-foot by 16-foot living room which fronts onto the square. And a few minutes ago we saw drinking water being lowered by a policeman from the floor above onto the balcony and then swung into the living room.
The outside broadcast unit turned up and they put a hoist up through our kitchen window and brought up blankets and towels and fresh linen and shirts for the reporters, a bottle of whiskey and lots of food. And we just set up camp in the living room.
The BBC had a very prominent house. We couldn't afford anything quite as grand, but could pay people a fee to go up to a window and with a bit of aspect. There were kind of various vantage points where you could at least see some kind of action going on.
The journalists, though, could see more than the gunmen, and inevitably they became their eyes and ears.
We presumed, and in fact I think at one point were told that they had a radio in there, and that in fact the terrorists were listening to our output.
That have been doing our bombings and shootings for the last 18 months.
And therefore, at some point in the siege, there was no question that we became part of the dynamic, that we were being fed tough, tough, tough stuff to sort of endorse what the negotiators were saying on the phone.
How do you think of...
The real problem was that even if they'd murdered those 2 hostages, they wouldn't have got more than another week's imprisonment. They'd killed so many people up to then that they could, in fact, do it with impunity, knowing that their prison sentence, if they were sentenced to imprisonment, would not increase. And, of course, we knew this as well.
I think they mainly listened
all
to
her records.
all her yeah.
She had loads of records of Engelbert Humperdinck, and ironically, one of them was "Please Release Me."
Please release me, let me go. For I don't love you anymore.
It's good.
terrified me to think that there were 5 men. I mean, would they have assaulted her in any way? All those thoughts went through my mind at that time.
What's up with you? I need to, you know, train the snake.
We'll use a bottle.
It wasn't a terribly big room, not for 5 men and a woman. It was awful for her.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Awful for her.
No one will ever know.
Jesus, can we listen to something else other than Engelbert Humperdinck bloody drink?
I like it. She likes it too, don't you, love?
We both like it.
By the second night, no one inside the flat had eaten. There was no access to the kitchen, and the police had refused O'Connell's requests for food.
Dawn on day 3 of the siege. In Dorset Square, nothing moved. It had been a quiet night with very few contacts between the police and the gunmen. As the police spokesman put it, we didn't disturb them.
It will be as long as the medical advice that we are getting assures us that we're not running into any danger to health.
You must be getting pretty near that danger line now, though.
Well, no, actually, it's quite remarkable how long one can exist, so we're informed, without food. Liquids are a different matter, of course.
Throughout the whole of the siege, I didn't make any immediate decisions. What I did was to say, look, I will have to ask somebody about that.
Why can't you make a decision yourself?
I'm only a detective superintendent. You know, I can't make that sort of decision. He'd asked for something, and I said, well, I've got to ask my governors about that.
We'll put your governor on the phone, I'll talk to him.
I didn't allow them to think that they could demand anything that was within reason.
Go fuck yourself.
He told me to go and have sexual intercourse with myself in the most aggressive way, of course. You can understand that. I think the lowest moment was when the phone went out. And I thought that had broken off the communication. And I thought, no longer am I going to be the negotiator.
I think we all fell victim to Balcombe Street fever, which was a complete inability to leave the place, because we were absolutely convinced that if we ever left, the thing would blow. I think we were pretty clear this would end very violently and very unpleasantly.
This is just sort of a few days before Christmas. And I remember my daughter and I went back to Paddington Station to get on the train. And the Salvation Army were belting out carols. And in the carriage, everybody were reading newspapers. And all you could see was headlines. I felt like screaming at them. Awful.
Sleep? I didn't know what sleep was during that siege because I sat on a little couch and that was my bed. Seemed like an eternity. I couldn't go to work.
I certainly couldn't. I just couldn't go to work. I just sat, watched every news item.
Yes.
I mean, there were days when I thought, God, I'm never going to see her again.
another 24 hours slipped by, and since O'Connell had jettisoned the phone, there had been no communication at all between the gunmen and the police. With O'Connell refusing to take back the phone, the police decided that they should use one of Mrs. Matthews' sisters to make contact via the television.
The police came over and fetched me. I can't tell you what police station they took me to. All I know, it was sort of like a darkish room.
I want to reassure her 100% that we're all keeping our chins up here. She must do the same thing for her family's sake.
I did appeal to the men. I was really addressing them. I did address Sheila and John a little bit, but mainly I was trying to get to the hearts of these four men.
These men, they are human beings, and I think this will come into it. I think they will let them go. I plead to them to let them go.
What's her health like? Can you say anything about that?
She's suffered with her nerves over a period of time. The fact that she's nervous isn't going to help her, obviously, but she's got a husband there that is such a level-headed person. He's a wonderful person, and I think with John there with her, this will help.
The appeal evoked no response, at least to begin with. But faced with another night without food, O'Connell let it be known that he was prepared to take the phone back in.
After 4 days, they decided they themselves would open a conversation about having a drink and some food. And that's when we were able to negotiate on something other than a plane to Ireland and £20,000. You know, that was a great advantage to us, that they were asking us for something which we could actually provide.
The soup. We're not taking it.
Come on, Joseph, it's hot, isn't it?
It's not what I fucking asked for! We should take it. You can shut your fucking trap.
Come on, Joseph.
Take it!
Come on, taste it. That's enough, that's enough.
The police had always known it was a risk to feed the gunmen. With food inside them, it was likely that their courage and resolve would return.
Do you know what Yeats said about your normal country Irishman? Your normal country lad thinks the more terrible the crime that's been committed, the greater must have been the provocation.
Yeats said that. Sounds like Arthur Guinness speaking.
You see, I don't think the Englishman believes that. He just sees the crime. Provocation doesn't enter into it. You know, it won't be a picnic if we're caught. An English jail, Eddie. It won't be like Long-Kesh. I don't want to surrender.
As the morning came on the 5th day, the gunmen were steeling themselves to make a breakout with the hostages.
Okay, get up. Walk around, get that circulation going.
Right, mister. What kind is it? It's the pale blue coating. And it's directly below.
Eddie, give him your coat.
I think if they'd tried to make a bolt for it, I think, and I must say, I hope, they'd have been shot.
But who would they have shot as well? Would they have shot?
I think Sheila
John
and
and
John would have been the first to go. I really do.
But by mid-morning, the fragile balance of power between gunmen and police had shifted again, dramatically.
The movement of SAS troops out of Chelsea Barracks last night is thought to be connected to the siege in Dorset Square. A police spokesman...
They said that the SAS had been brought in, and Sheila told me, she said they were just 4 frightened men.
It could just be horse shit.
I don't know. It's the radio. They're not saying it for our benefit.
Well, we don't know that. I mean, they could be.
They didn't like it when they were looking down the barrel of a gun themselves.
It's like Fort Knox out there.
The prospect of the SAS lifting the siege broke the stalemate.
During a conversation, Tom said to me, he said, "Now what are these terms for our surrender?" Now I'd never used that word before.
What the gunmen agreed to in the first place was to release one of the hostages.
No, let's get it straight then, so there's no mistake. You'll let Mrs. Matthews go? Yes. There's not much of a walk. She knows the way. If she turns left and walks along the balcony, there'll be somebody there to meet her.
Somebody will have to go with her. If one of our men walks her by the window and comes back again, can you give them safe passage?
Yes.
The agreement was that he would be allowed to come back. And Tom had said to this, if he goes with her, can he come back? And again, I had to say yes. There was no time to say, well, I'll ask my governors. You know, it sounds like you're saying, please, sir, will you not shoot him or will you shoot him? It was a question we didn't want to answer. So I said yes, he could come back into the flat.
This was the fruit of a dialogue that had been started half an hour earlier, and the turning point had been the terrorists' agreement to talk again on the field telephone, which they had rejected 3 days earlier.
As he went out, I told him to keep his hands in the air, and he put one hand in the air, and I thought, well, he's got his other hand on a gun in his pocket. So I had to say to him, I said, tell him to put his other hand in the air as well, both of them. And I heard Tom call out, he said, Eddie, Eddie, put your other hand in the air. So we knew it was Eddie.
The agreement they had come to was that in the first place the gunmen would be given food, a late police lunch of sausages and sprouts, in exchange for the first hostage.
There's a picture of Sheila just looking over the balcony. I just sat and cried. It was so awful.
She was a pathetic figure, wasn't she?
She was holding onto the railing and just looked down. Oh dear, that was awful. Even though I knew then she was safe, but it was just an awful moment.
I think we all knew that it had turned in our favour completely at that time. But then we had to make sure that there was no mistake on either side, that they didn't bring a gun out and shoot somebody, and that none of our fellows who'd been waiting for them for a week had got trigger happy and thought that they were doing something silly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. If that's what you want, okay. No, we'll be unarmed. Okay, hang on. We're to go out one by one, and we leave our weapons here. Just a second. Paddy will go first. He'll have both his hands in the air. Eddie, you go.
Here. Take this. Just in case, like.
Two hours later came the second break in the deadlock. The first of the gunmen came out unarmed. All the group's weapons, and it turned out later they had 5 handguns between them, were left in the flat behind them.
A cry went up, and we knew it was going, and I shouted down to my news desk on the radio. I said, "It's happening, it's over."
The second gunman out. The movement again very cautious and deliberate. This was the sequence agreed with the police, who kept armed watch throughout.
Tom said to me, "What next?" And I said, "Well, now, Mr. Matthews." But there were firearms teams all round the flat. I didn't want anyone to think that he was a terrorist and shoot him. That would have been disastrous. So I said, "Tell him to keep his hands above his head."
There was, of course, still the other hostage to come, and he was the next out. Police said later that this order had been agreed on, with Mr. Matthews released after the first 2 gunmen, but before the other 2, because they would have been a little apprehensive if it had been done any other way.
And he was taken into the next flat as though he was a terrorist. He was pulled in by the firearms team. And that was the safest way to do it.
Okay, Harry. I'll see you in Ireland, Joe.
Then the third of the gang followed. Same caution, same procedure as before. The last gunman stayed in telephone contact with the police throughout, saying he's coming, as each of his colleagues emerged through the window.
The final stages when they were coming out, although one keeps a calm exterior, inside you're churned up.
Okay, Tom. No, you've not left any booby traps or anything in there, have you?
No, there's nothing.
Where are the guns? All on the floor?
You know where the curtains are drawn here at the corner near the TV?
Yeah.
They're just all there, okay?
Okay. Are they unloaded or loaded?
Yes, they're loaded.
They're loaded. Okay, don't touch them.
They'd had them for a year or so before then, of course. And they'd been shooting people with them. And it sounded silly, me saying, "Don't touch those weapons."
Okay, Tom?
All right.
Yeah, I'll see you at the station later, okay?
See you, Nick.
Don't forget now.
I'm putting the phone down now. It's okay, is it?
Now just a minute before you put it down.
Okay.
Don't forget, hands above your head and keep them there.
Yeah, okay, right.
It was absolutely breathtaking, a massively emotional moment. I think one of the most emotional moments in any reporting I've ever done.
For certain, then, the siege is over. Tremendous elation that this siege has ended peacefully.
It was a great moment knowing that it had all ended without any bloodshed. Something that all throughout the siege, we didn't know whether that would happen or not. We could never be certain because of all of the dreadful atrocities that they had committed along the road.
I just gathered her up. My brother started to cry. And I mean, he was a big man. You can look back on it and you think this couldn't have happened to us, but of course it did.
The 1974-75 campaign of terror in London was carried out by men who thought that the carnage they caused was ordained by the strength of their own beliefs, and that it would sap the will to resist from the ordinary person. But Londoners were resilient, and they did resist. Those responsible for the terror, Hugh Doherty, Joseph O'Connell, Eddie Butler, Harry Duggan, were eventually convicted at the Old Bailey. All received multiple life sentences. They formed, according to the man who pursued them from the beginning, the most formidable terrorist cell ever to strike England.
Bright, intelligent, ruthless, committed.
no conscience at all. No apology for the dead and the injured. No apology for what they had done, which they considered to be justified because they were at war with England.
The atrocities in Guildford and Woolwich, O'Connell did claim in court as his work, and not that of the 4 innocent people in jail. Despite this, the Guildford Four were to spend another 14 years behind bars before their convictions were quashed. As for O'Connell and his men, they were eventually released in 1999 under the Good Friday Agreement and received with acclamation by Gerry Adams and Sinn Féin. The lives lost in their terror remain lost.
Put the events of 1974 to 5 in order at channel4.com/history. Confusion and misconception surrounding a condition affecting 10% of the population. Dispatches exposes the dyslexia myth next Thursday at 9.